Wonderful. Wonderful. So maybe I'll go next because I'm clearly seeing that CB is the celebrity. Chandrashekar is a celebrity here. So maybe let let me start the conversation and kind of have him come into the discussion. So wonderful to be here. I'm a newbie into the Sus Mafia and I'm already enjoying it. I think 2 weeks back to back and attending 2 sessions and perhaps contributing positively to this one. So it's wonderful to be part of this mafia and contribute positively to it. So I think like Sharmila mentioned, we are trying to do this whole SusTalk with a twist. No presentations, no frameworks and all that visual part. Of course, maybe we'll still talk about some frameworks. I don't know about CPR. So we'll kind of do it more like like Sharmila said, fireside, but that is a fireside with a twist. So I think both of us are going to shoot questions at each other, and hopefully that will kind of bring in the topic of today's discussion, right? So we're talking about sustainability at the heart of it, but also talking about building ventures through, I mean, leveraging investment and capital, people, right? I mean, they're the two big ingredients that make up ventures, right? And so maybe the way also we thought we will kind of get into the motion is actually by talking about our journeys, and also that enables us to introduce ourselves, right? So that's the format. So yeah, let's see how this goes, and this would be a good experiment for all of us. So yeah, welcome CB. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, wonderful.
Welcome to you too. Welcome to Sus Mafia. I'm sure there'll be
yeah.
amazing collaborations that are possible within this community. And as the vision statement of Sus Mafia says, we want to make sustainability the default choice by using collaborative approach.
Wonderful. I think that's something already something I learned in the beginning of the session. So thanks for pointing it out. So CB, over to you. Actually, why don't you talk about your journey? Like you are an engineer turned MBA, like many of us are, and how did actually sustainability come into this whole process, right? Of you getting educated and all that, and you can actually recount your journey from how did your experiences, your education, and all that to what you're doing today. And leave with me, what does sustainability actually mean to you, being the founder of Trashin?
Yeah, I'll answer the last question first because that's the most impactful, according to me. I've heard, Jack Ma of Alibaba says that, who says that, the vision for Alibaba is to stay alive for 100 years, right? And truly impactful organizations create impact over a sustained period of time. And that has been the driving force for me so far, to be resilient enough to actually take Trashin through all its ups and downs and create a long-lasting company. I hope we stay for 100 years and even more. And that's what drives me every single day. That's what gives me the push to get out of bed and start working every single day. And for me, sustainability from a business angle is that it's to ensure that the company stays. And as a CEO, I think that's what you're supposed to make sure that you're able to deliver. But then from a climate change sustainability perspective, I believe a lot of it is timing. When I had thankfully the opportunity to travel a lot, internationally within India over the past so many years, and for me, identifying a problem that you see around you on a regular basis is a very key approach at identifying a large solvable problem. And when you travel, you actually have a broad mindset to identify problems that people across the world face. And for me, waste, why Trashin identified waste as the problem that we wanted to solve was precisely this. We saw that it's a large, massive global problem that I identified wherever I used to travel. My father used to tell me right from my childhood, even when I was not very keen about sustainability or not aware of the complications that the world would be going through in the future. He used to tell me that sustainability would become big, just through his experience at his place of work. That stayed with me. And then in college, thankfully, I had the opportunity to network with so many amazing batchmates, seniors of mine, entrepreneurs from college who are building amazing startups. And then from a timing perspective, that was exactly when, in India, we launched Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, right, in 2014. I was in my second year of college then. And all these, recollections from my past kind of, stuck to my head, and waste became an obsessive problem that I really wanted to solve. So in my third year, in 2015, I actually, went to, do a cleanup drive in college along with a few of my friends on Gandhi Jayanti, which was October 2nd. And that's how I remember Trashin first taking its roots. I think when you actually take that first step is when you really get motivated to continue the journey further. And yeah, that was my initial point. And here we are about 7 years from then. And hopefully this company will grow and, will really create impact, not just for the planet, but also for the people that are working together with us, our investors, and of course, for the informal sector that we are trying to organize in this process.
Wonderful. Thanks, CB. I think a lot of us did those Gandhi Jayanti cleaning drives, especially. And we share our alma maters, by the way, also, right? I mean,
So
that's
this is a typical framing effect sort of a thing, right? Where when individuals like us do it, it really doesn't create as much impact as when somebody who's very popular does it. And I'm not a celebrity, as you said earlier. So when somebody popular does it, it really helps to gain momentum for the cause. So Srikanth, let me take it up and maybe flip that question back to you. And why don't you tell us more about your journey? Because I believe you have been in the investment space at Social Alpha, where, thankfully, Trashin is a Social Alpha portfolio company. And you have been in that for about 4 years. And now you're at Qapita, heading growth. So what has your journey been like? And, with regards to capital raising and people management?
Yeah, no, I'll definitely touch upon that. But yeah, I was just completing that, a lot of us did these beach cleaning drives. I think we also share our alma mater, and very few actually, go up to do something like this, because I also, I also ended up doing that, in fact. No, but thanks for the question. Yeah, like I also like many of us here, I'm an average, engineer turned MBA. There's a statement in Three Idiots I recount always, that, मैंने engineering किया फिर MBA किया फिर बैंक में नौकरी किया. That's exactly what my journey has been. So I initially did engineering from NIT Surat, then I did my MBA from same institutes as Chandrashekar did,
Yes.
from Bangalore. And then I did a couple of years, actually 5 years, in a couple of investment banks, Goldman Sachs and Royal Bank of Scotland. That's where I kind of got that, finance and indexing on finance as a skill, right? And then I really wanted to apply it, even the whole beach cleaning and all that, social impact initiatives, the volunteering initiatives we did in institutes, it kind of manifested later in my journey, when I thought I have an opportunity to actually create something that is impactful. And that's where Social Alpha as an opportunity surfaced, right? I happened to be at the right place at the right time. A batchmate was setting it up, I was in a banking job and I had to take a call, and I fortunately did that, because I really feel Social Alpha was really my real MBA, I would say, because I could learn from entrepreneurs like Chandrashekar, right? So I spent about 5 years at Social Alpha, where I mean, it was ground up. Like, as much as it was working with startups, it was also being in a startup itself, as it was a 0 to 1 journey there of setting up the investment processes, verticals, making the first set of investments. In fact, my first investment was in sustainability space. It was Hasiru Dala, which I'm still kind of proud of. I think Chandrashekar also works or knows them closely as well.
Yes.
So one of the very pioneering entrepreneurs coming out of Bangalore, and making waste as a mainstream or a sector that is investable in some sense, proving a model that I think earlier was not really demonstrated at a certain scale. So yeah, I mean, I've learned the ropes of investments by just making mistakes, I think, I guess, and working with entrepreneurs. Thankfully, people like Chandrashekar gave me enough rope to learn with them, and hopefully then eventually add value to them. So I think that has been a learning at Social Alpha, where one, we were building our own 0 to 1 journeys. Second is, we participated in various opportunities, or under various circumstances with those 0 to 1 journeys that various entrepreneurs did. I had the good fortune of at least meeting maybe, I don't know, maybe 300 to 400 entrepreneurs in person, I would say, as I was evaluating them.
That's brilliant. I mean, that completely changes your perspective
Exactly.
as to how to evaluate startups, actually.
Exactly. And everyone comes with their own theory of change, their passion. You get energized. Like, some days I've like met with 5 founders in a day. That's incredible, right? The kind of experience and journey which I kind of took away in Qapita as well. So yeah, Social Alpha has been like a real kind of an MBA experience, thanks really to Manoj, who has been really my mentor and guide, and even now, actually. And that's where I learned about one investment. The whole, of course, we came with this whole formalized public markets, investment banking kind of a lens, to now venture investing as a new asset class, right? It comes with its own risk, but comes with its own excitement. So did that, funded about 40 companies while I left Social Alpha. Now I think we are going on to maybe 60 investments. And also learned from how how companies were building people, right? How they were structuring their 0 to 1 journeys, 1 to 10 journeys, and so on and so forth. So learned a lot from there. Realized during pandemic, everyone had their own introspection moment, and I had mine, and I realized, okay, let's be in a startup, then facilitate or manage startups. And that's where Qapita just raised seed funding and looking at founding members in India. And that's where I again happened to be at the right moment at the right time.
You have
I was
sustainability startups who have been a part of Qapita too, who have used Qapita's
Yes,
products. So,
yes, of course, you are one of the beacons there, but of course,
yeah.
a lot of other startups in the sustainability sector also, because eventually, even all kinds of startups need to be more organized, right? And that's what Qapita does. So while I was managing 40 spreadsheets in Social Alpha, I realized it's better to be done in an automated way using technology. That's what Qapita set out to do. And
Awesome.
I joined Qapita to lead their growth, and here I am, working again closely with startups, a job role that I really love,
Hmm.
and working also in a very new flavor of structuring the right people, strategies and incentives, and which is what I'll double click on subsequently in this discussion as well.
Sure.
So yeah, so definitely bringing the whole investment and people lens here. But
Right.
of course, I think my stint at Social Alpha also helped me sensitize about impact and sustainability and those, so on and so forth. So that has been my journey, and happy to double click as we go along with this
I mean,
conversation.
I think we should definitely recommend all the mafiosos to check out Social Alpha, and they invest in startups. Trashin was one of the first startups where they invested in, and then they took us for incubation. So if you are ready for either incubation or investment, feel free to reach out, and I'm sure they're a great support system. We have a board observer from Social Alpha, Purvaja, and I get into a conversation with Manoj once in a while as well. Amazing group of individuals who are really impact first, if I may say, right?
Yeah.
For them, it really doesn't matter if the startup that you're building might not succeed in the long term, but if you're creating some sort of a change at a systems level, I think that is what they really are more interested in. They really want you to create new markets, explore areas that conventional entrepreneurs, conventional investors do not usually explore. And it's a brilliant organization. They call themselves a platform that bring together entrepreneurs, investors, academia, and any sort of institution that can work together to make sustainability mainstream.
Wonderful. Thanks. I mean, I couldn't. I think coming from an entrepreneur actually is much better. So thanks for calling out Social Alpha. It has been a real experience for me as well as I went through that. So yeah, that has been my journey. But let me now flip back to you, right? So
Okay.
uh, so, so now that we have formally introduced, right, CB, and also kind of weaved in the topic for today's discussion, let's zoom in on a couple of points, right? So first, something that I would like to ask you is the intersection between sustainability and entrepreneurship, right? Now, you in a way represent that, right? Represent that change, right? I mean, because I think sustainability traditionally had a very non-profit connotation to it, right? But now it's fast changing. It's slow. Hopefully, and very soon it will become a mainstream sector, as we call it, right? So what is the role of entrepreneurship in driving our sustainability goals, and how has your journey been so far? As a sustainability entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think if you notice how the non-profit world has merged into a capitalistic world over the past few decades. If you look at how lending, to the informal sector, it all started with that revolution from Muhammad Yunus of Grameen Bank about 3 decades back. Who kind of had a very new system of saying that fine, instead of taking collateral, we will use your social collateral as a way to justify whether you're credit worthy or not, right? So having that perspective, that perspective that shifts the roles of the stakeholders in the ecosystem is very useful. Because in mainstream capitalism, what happens is you stick to these adhered norms of defining people a certain way. But if you're able to flip roles or flip responsibilities of the stakeholders in a certain value chain, you can really change the game, whichever sector you are building, right? So that was the case with the lending sector, maybe say 3 decades back. And then, eventually it became such a mainstream capitalistic segment that now there are so many microfinance institutions who keep lending to the informal sector, and it may be a little more mainstream than the standard banking, whatever happens these days. But now, sustainability has a new definition, and the definition keeps evolving according to me, right? And now, if you look at how the lending space has evolved, actually, lending has become so mainstream and capitalistic that the real benefits are not going to the downtrodden at the base of the pyramid. So we might have new definitions of what social collateral really means, new definitions of actually identifying credit worthiness, and so on. And for me, sustainability, as I said, point one is to make sure that your company survives for a large period of time. Trashin has been in existence for about 7 years now, of which the first 5 years were, very, very, you can call it the gestation period, right? Where the growth rate wouldn't be as much, but then, Paul Graham from Y Combinator says that you have to do things that don't scale in the initial parts of your journey. And that's what actually gave us all the learnings in the initial years to understand about the market, and to make the pivots that were required to build a technology company where we are right now. Since we have pivoted, we have already closed 2 rounds of funding. We've closed our seed and then our pre-series round of funding. So I think it's important to go through that journey. The initial few years, the gestation period will be very critical, because for us, that opportunity is basically to understand the market, take all inputs from stakeholders, understand their roles and responsibilities, see how we can make changes in the preconceived norms so that we can come up with a more defined systems change version of how to build our company. And that's what Trashin is trying to do right now, right? And I believe that is what eventually leads to sustained impact, if you're able to solve a problem at a systems change level, right? I also recommend you all, there is a free Ashoka masterclass on systems change that it's about a 10-hour video, plus there's some workbooks that you need to fill up, some assignments, but such a brilliant fundamental thought process shift that you can gain by going through that systems change masterclass. So yeah, I think my perspective on sustainability, if I had to sum it up in 3 words, stay default alive.
Wonderful. First, sustain yourself, and then maybe think of.
Yeah, I mean, truly, it really comes back to, and as sustainability entrepreneurs, where it's so difficult to get mainstream attention into what we are doing, right? I mean, either from media, it's a little easier from the media these days because it's becoming a buzzword these days, but from traditional mainstream investments or to recruit people and so on, it's very critical that we look at our personal well-being too in this process, right? I mean, I've personally gone through such a difficult time during the pandemic, where it was so hard for me to keep a check on myself and my well-being, and I think if we do that, if we take care of ourselves really well, I think that gives us a lot of energy to that aura to actually build up within our organization and into the communities that we're trying to serve.
No, wonderful, CB. I think great points for any entrepreneur listening out there, right? So first, look at the core existential aspects of sustainability, but also then you also mentioned about systems, and I think that really differentiates any other organization working on sustainability to really entrepreneurs working on sustainability looking to scale. And I think I can see that spark in you and many other entrepreneurs that I've met with, right? So definitely the systems change, because that is what eventually makes a profitable model, which can then scale, obviously creating a lot of impact as it goes along. So wonderful. Yeah. What do you have in store for me now?
What's your take on investment in sustainability sectors? I mean, is there enough capital out there for entrepreneurs? We have some amazing investors who are actually reaching out to SusMafia these days, but I believe kind of the attention that mainstream investors, although it's increasing, but it's still on the lower end. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, no, I think it's like everything else in the startup ecosystem, right? Like today is always much better than yesterday, and tomorrow we know will be much better than today, right? In everything. And I think definitely in the area of sustainability and many other impact sectors, I think it's just going much more, with a higher velocity than, let's say, some of the other sector. Of course, everything is growing, but I think there's a lot more focus, and it has come rather late, right? If you think about it, right? So I feel like the timing couldn't be better as of today.
Exactly.
I think we are at the cusp of sustainability becoming a mainstream sector, which will attract a lot of capital in the coming years, and it has many things driving it, right? So first, I mean, I would like to take example of the fintech sector, right? You nicely quoted Mohammed Yunus in your introduction. And I mean, fintech and financial inclusion and all these concepts were so development sector-ish, right? I mean, and now you don't even need to call it as a development sector because it's a mainstream problem. There's obviously fundamental influx of technology, etc., which, and also some very strategic initiatives which provided the rails for the fintech sector to ride on, right? Which is your whole India stack and all of that, which really, I mean, there are so many Twitter chatter, that, what's in the US and what's in India, and how in India is a much better and evolved fintech sector as it is today. And it took is the last 4 or 5 years, because there's so much of catalyzing effect of
the entire intervention of UPI has significantly transformed fintech in India. I believe
exactly.
there are a few hundred, million users of UPI right now in
Yeah,
India.
exactly, right. So these government-led, industry-enabled infrastructure rails actually enabled the whole system to then innovate on top of it. That the existential aspects were solved for, and you are looking at the more. So I think similar. One thing that has happened in the sustainability is the goalposts are now defined. Be it, be it those whole, the COP challenge or whatever, India wants to be at some place, at some level, right? Be net zero and all that, and many other industry specific mandates, or sector specific mandates of being net zero, or things like that. So I think people are forming their goalposts, which is the first step, I would say. But I think, yeah, fundamental, those rails creation is still something that is evolving. But I think the more entrepreneurs are thrown at this problem, not really thrown, but they kind of come at this problem, I think the more of these rails will be created, on which every other incremental entrepreneur kind of will build on. So in a way, I think you or a Shaker or Ganesh, everyone on this call are really very audacious entrepreneurs to go into a sector where I think market models are still being formed, right? So it's a very challenging time to be in a sector, but I think that's where the audacity of a social entrepreneur comes in, right? And I think hopefully you will de-risk the sector itself for many other
Exactly.
Chandrashekar.
And, Manoj from Social Alpha mentioned this in one of his recent podcasts that, I think I brought it up earlier too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That the kind of change that we bring in, it might not be seen uh, during, the short term for our organization. It can actually be experienced by other stakeholders in the whole ecosystem, right? There might be a ripple effect in the ecosystem, which we might not be aware of currently.
exactly. So, and Hari makes a good point, right? So these are all driven by market failures, or non-existence of markets also, right? And that is where the rails are getting created to make markets where value can be traded, right? And that's where entrepreneurs will thrive. So I think that is what is happening in the sustainability sector as we speak. Like, a waste is becoming a mainstream, or of course there are many other really sexy sectors that are emerging, like EV and all that. So I think sustainability as a broad has many sub verticals. I think each of them are accelerating as a sector in very very fast pace. And I think capital will just follow these opportunities, right? The more the opportunities get created, just like what has happened in fintech now. Every fund invests in fintech, right? So I know we are still in the space that, okay, you go to this fund or this fund, they are the one who are investing in ESG or these matters. But eventually this will become a horizontal that every mainstream fund will kind of look at. It's already happening. I think you go to any large fund, you will find a lot of sustainability startups already. Of course, like even in fintech, right? Everything went into microfinance initially, and then into many various other things. So there'll be concentration of some of the subsectors which are more market led or more sexy in that sense, or more.
Do you think that it's so? See, most sustainability entrepreneurs are solving problems that are so massive that to come up with the impactful solution right at the start might be difficult. Impact measurement itself is a challenge for many of us.
Yes.
And in some cases, impact measurement actually makes sense when the organization is a little more mature, and those metrics and milestones might not be as clear in the beginning. So what advice would you like to give sustainability entrepreneurs who would like to have a very clear measurable progress card, which then can be shared with investors who can then trust in them and believe that yes, these companies will eventually create massive impact?
Right. No, I think some of these advice will be generic only, right? So one is just focus on the core sustainability of the model itself, right? If it doesn't survive, then how will you even scale it, right?
Hmm.
Although I know in the initial stages, impact measurement, especially for the kind of capital you raise, is paramount. But I think eventually it is because it will embed or ingrain into the purpose of the organization. The fact that you are scaling means impact is happening, right?
Hmm.
I mean, that is the reality we should all aspire for, that impact is by default. You don't need to actually create a metric to give it to an impact investor. I know that is the reality today, and everyone will have. I'm sure you will. Social Alpha has put an impact metric that it is monitoring. But I think tomorrow, just because Trashin is becoming hopefully a billion-dollar company, that's what it is creating a lot of impact. By that means itself. So I am actually of that thought, and that's exactly happened in fintech or some of the other sectors. It will soon hopefully happen in many other sectors as well. But to the larger question that you asked, I think the capital is just flowing in. There are more and more funds, although there is so-called funding winter. I mean, if you think about it, all these sectors were already in funding winter, right? So we are actually seeing spring and summer at a decadal level.
So
So
hopefully
I
the
think
funding winter in other domains might get us more sunrise that we required. Yeah.
I hope so, but I'm not sure, but I hope so. But yeah, I mean, everything is going in the positive direction. So I think these sectors will see much more specific funds coming to India. Like many European capital is already coming to India in these sectors. But more mainstream capital, even domestic capital will eventually, get into these sectors. And I think a lot of these CSR and all of this will actually underwrite the
And then the best part is, I mean, I like the way you said that domestic capital is flowing in, and I have actually seen a higher increase in HNIs who are angel investors to invest in sustainability startups, and I think that is a very good target for sustainability entrepreneurs to tap into, because the HNIs are more aware about climate change problems across the world. They are more well-to-do and have surplus capital that they can infuse, and if you're really able to
and
impress
that
them with your vision, I think that's a very good way to raise some capital in the
And
short
that's a great point, because that's actually one trend that I think is emerging. Few of the spotted, actually, Manoj actually spotted long back, actually, is this whole shift from, very value-based consumption to now sustainable consumption, right? So there's an underlying, new generation also looking at, better consumption practices and all that. And this whole D2C is also kind of fueling that possibilities, because those products
time.
were never available. Now they are. So people are making their choices. And that kind of, I think this is all hypothetical I'm speaking, but all of that is kind of having a percolatory effort
Right.
into the whole ecosystem, including HNIs, to kind of allocate capital to these kind of things. But yeah, I think
Exactly.
all good, CB. I think the answer is, it's all green light for you and all your, peers who are driving sustainability and enterprises here, right? But let me ask you about a little bit of your experience. I think you already covered a lot about your journey. But what have been some of the real challenges that you faced? I mean, it's still not very rosy to start a sustainability startup, right? So would you want to recount one or two, or how have you
Yeah, I
really
mean,
faced them? What have your learnings been? How did you win over them?
yeah. I mean, in hindsight, everything is much more clear, and even the challenges that I have faced in my journey might not be challenges if I look back, at them in hindsight, because I know what I could do better to actually, skip that phase. But yeah, I think the key challenges that I had faced in the past, which I would say is attracting and retaining very good talent. I think that had been a core challenge during the days when capital was not available in plenty. And we had a very cash flow driven business, which means that every single day the focus was on doing transactions, getting our money on time, paying our workers. We had a set of blue collar workers, paying them on time, and then hoping to take a decent salary back home. And I started with a very basic 14,000 per month salary when I began the company, and to progressively depending on the scale of the company, deciding whether we can make it 20, 30, 40, right? I mean, it had been a very slow and steady growth for myself as well in my own organization, right? In terms of taking some salary so that I can pay my bills. So finding and retaining great talent is always a challenge, because great talent comes at a cost. Now, how do you get them to it's easy to inspire people with your vision, but at the end of the day, they always think about how am I going to pay my bills? And I'm going to, there's opportunity cost, right? If I would rather work at a Google or a Facebook, I mean, I'm going to get a $150,000 salary or a $200,000 salary. But rather working in the startup, I might not even get a $10,000 salary. So how do you justify that big gap to your potential teammates? And when I say teammates, it's right from your leadership team, right from your co-founders to your subsequent employees who join the company. That has been a big challenge, and I think that's a constant challenge. That challenge never disappears. It's just that you have to find better ways of dealing with the situation. You have to deliver enough progress to inspire more people, and deliver enough progress to investors to gather enough capital to manage the whole thing. And it's a it's a back and forth, and it's a progress that you need to make on a continuous basis. One of the key challenges. Apart from that, I think as sustainability entrepreneurs, I'm not speaking for everybody here. This is a challenge that I face personally, where it was a big, it was a very challenging process to gain momentum in what we were building, right? And again, I would go back to the Ashoka Systems Change Masterclass, because that taught me why and how you can build momentum in what you're doing. You might be continuing to solve the problem that you're doing right now, but just do the math and figure out how long it is going to take you to solve the problem through your entire target segment, right? And in some cases, for example, if I had continued doing what I was doing 3 years back, we could have, we would not have been able to solve the problem even after 200 years of consistent effort, because the problem is so large, right? So the biggest challenge is to figure out the right approach. And I actually emphasize on this, that, you need to go with a very indirect approach to solving the problem through affiliations and partnerships. I think that's the best approach to scaling impact exponentially, and actually maybe within, say, 5 or 10 years, deliver some sort of impact that can be measurable in the larger scale of things. But be very conscious about your actions and see whether you're actually creating impact for that problem within a decent amount of time. You can't solve massive global problems in a few years. It might take a decade, 2 decades, or even 3 decades. But if you're taking hundreds of years to solve a problem, well, you might have to rethink on that. Yeah.
Wonderful. And yeah, that's where partnerships come in. I think these problems are so massive that I think individual organizations can't do it. And I think definitely partnerships. That's wonderful. I think people are already asking about the link of the masterclass from Ashoka. So I'm sure you'll put it.
Sure. I will definitely share it across in our SusMafia WhatsApp group.
Right.
If you need any help, please feel free to reach out to me. And meanwhile, I had a question for Srikanth, and this is with regard to specifically to what you are doing at Qapita, right? Because I've had a situation where I had to get teammates by giving them equity, giving them ESOPs. Right. The initial co-founding team, I had to commit equity, but then later on in our first funding round, institutional funding round, we were asked by the investors to create ESOPs. And that was the time I started thinking about ESOPs better. I still have a long way to go. So I have a couple of questions more intertwined about ESOPs, which is how do you think about ESOPs? How much should you allocate? When should you allocate? What is the right mindset to allocate to employees? And what are the kind of parameters that you need to evaluate before you decide you're going to give ESOPs? And giving ESOPs is just one part of the story, but then ultimately value is created when your teammates are able to get an ESOP buyback from the company, right? Where they're able to get some financial incentive in the process. And how do you think about buyback? When should you do buyback? So there's a lot of things there. And I think it's a very core part of retaining and motivating employees, especially in a growing company. Because as I said, it's not possible to create impact as an individual. It's all about teamwork and collaboration.
Yeah, wonderful, CB. Thanks for laying the question context so well. And I think ESOPs, while a generic topic, I think it's super relevant for this audience as well. Because I think one of the biggest challenges I think companies here would face as you scale is people, right? At the end of the day, and there are many other startups funded by many other investors who are all vying for the same talent. So how do you really differentiate? Right. And that's where I think one, of course, because at some level, you're all looking at someone who's purpose led here, right? I mean, who also aligns with the same mission that you are all setting out for, right? In a way, I think at least your first 10, 20 hires, you're really looking at people who've come with that DNA, right? Because that is what will get them to stay longer while the challenges that CB mentioned persist for maybe 2 years, 3 years, and maybe longer as well, right? And that's where I think ESOP as an instrument really links very well, because it is creating that umbilical cord and creating that whole win-win proposition of finding yourself one with the company, and second is also benefiting, as the company creates value, you create value, right? So it's just a nice instrument which align incentives as well as aligns your objective with the objective of the company, right? So that's in a nutshell. But taking a step back, so at Qapita, we basically help all stages of companies. We obviously work with very early stage companies like Trashin, but also work with unicorns on the other end of the spectrum to basically help they manage their equity better, where equity is what creates value for everyone, for a founder, for an employee, and for an investor. And we basically help companies to, like, we are a SaaS platform to help them manage their cap tables, transactions, ensure they're DD ready for their next round, and then also then structure ESOP schemes. And we are kind of doing that for Trashin as well, right? So coming to specifically on ESOPs, there are multiple kind of rule of thumb here, right? So one, obviously, what kind of an organization you want to build, that if you want to signal to the ecosystem that, hey, you want to democratize value creation, I mean, as well as value distribution, then maybe you should go for a decent enough ESOP pool, which actually signals your intent to share wealth with your people who have joined you at an early stage, right? Then there are various other ways in which you can attract the right talent by further signaling the intent of sharing by coming up with the right scheme or right policy. How friendly is it, right? How frequently do you want to give ESOP to your employees? How is it incentivized? Do they have to pay anything to get the share? That's a strike price, right? Or do they? How do they vest? Do they vest, annually or much frequently? Can they exercise? How is taxation implicable? So each of these are like will require more discussion, which I'll not cover into this. But there is definitely some rules of thumb on structuring the right incentive scheme to even attract the right talent, right? The last thing that CB mentioned is about this liquidity, right? So what is ESOP worth if there's no money that is following, right? It's otherwise it's just like paper money, right? It's just nominally.
Yeah. And in Wolf of Wall Street, they say fugazi, right? That's exactly that.
Right. But things are again changing. Like, sustainability as a sector, even ESOP liquidity, like what was earlier considered a lottery ticket, which nobody really cared, and say, okay, just increase my fixed by so much, I don't care about ESOPs, kind of a mentality. Because they only saw maybe an Infosys or a Flipkart, they have unlocked a lot of value, but mainstream startups didn't. But now you would be surprised to know that about 43 startups last year did liquidity programs for their employees, impacting tens of thousands of employees, right? Worth about $450 million, right? US dollars, right? So I think a lot of money is now available, and for companies to consider liquidity. Now, coming to CV's question of when to consider liquidity, I think I mean, I would really say, get that initial, house scalability of your business model in order.
Right.
So mostly I've seen Series B and beyond companies where they have either hit unit economics profitability or arrived at a model from where they are going to the next lever of growth and raise large amount of funding so that they can actually demand from their investors, because then you're also a professionally run company. It's not just a CB's company.
If I may add, what do you think is the right team size? I mean, at what stage should you think of creating an ESOP pool? Because there might be founders with a 2-3 people team. There might be founders with a larger team size. So when should you consider starting with your ESOP program?
Yeah, I mean, my simple answer to them, that is, when you're promising someone, you should create an ESOP pool, right? Because I know many founders, what they do is they promise and then, they decay the pool creation. See,
correct.
Many times I've seen a lot of employees, although they might not state it explicitly, actually, leaving with a bad taste in their mouth, right? If they don't get the right grants at the right stages. And earlier it was very hassle prone, right? You had to, get a lot of legal work and all that. We at Qapita are actually simplifying. You can get your ESOPs created in 3 days now, flat, right? Wow. So I think when the friction of creating these things is not, I think much earlier is better. I would say when you're promising to people equity, right? Because then you're also following through on that promise and giving them something that is legally valid. Otherwise, it's just a verbal promise, which I mean, it's just not right, perhaps, at some point. Yeah. But yes, having said that, more practically, people create their ESOP pools at the seed round of funding, because investors also would, like you said, that is the nudge. In most cases, that is a nudge. But increasingly, I'm seeing a lot of founders being more proactive and creating ESOPs much earlier, as and when they're hiring the strategic people and giving them ESOPs formally. And Qapita gives you the digital way you can communicate ESOPs to your employees, and they also see, like, just like they see their investments, they can also see their ESOPs kind of gaining their value and really giving that feeling of it's an appreciating instrument than a piece of paper that was promised on day one, kind of a thing. So yeah, there are multiple. Of course, I don't want to double click too much on ESOPs at this, but happy to.
I mean, personally as well, in our company, we created an ESOP pool that has diluted over 2 rounds of funding. We have already allotted about 90% of the shares in the ESOP pool to teammates, and we are even thinking about creating a new ESOP pool during the next funding round to maybe the size of the pool might be different, the value might be different, but ultimately a sufficient enough ESOP pool to encourage maybe the next 100 people to join the team, right? So I think it's a question we need to keep asking ourselves on a regular basis, and I personally made that
definitely in the right
ESOP pool creation.
You are
I
right.
personally made that mistake of delaying ESOP pool creation way too long.
Yeah.
And until, it became a mandate that you have to do it to do something. Otherwise, it won't happen. Right? So, but yeah, it's always good to show the team, as you said, that you're delivering on your promise as soon as possible, because then it helps you build trust as a founder, and they also start becoming very motivated to work with such founders.